I'm joined now by Armando Valdes. He is a radio analyst for Radio Isla. He's also an attorney on the island of Puerto Rico. Armando, tell me what happened on your radio show. Who said what?
So Senator Nelson Cruz, who is a senator from the PNP, specifically from a southern district, a district of Ponce in the Senate, indicated that 15 minutes prior, the president of the Senate, Tomás Rivera Schatz, had spoken to him and to other members of the Senate delegation, the PNP majority Senate delegation, and that the governor would be sending over to both houses of the legislature the appointment of Pedro Pierluisi, who was resident commissioner in Washington from Puerto Rico, and also his primary challenger in the 2016 primary for the gubernatorial race, that he would be appointing Pedro Pierluisi to the Secretary of State, and that once he was confirmed and once the governor resigned, he would then become governor of Puerto Rico. This senator indicated that in addition to that, that they had the votes already in the Senate to vote down this nomination. And he even said that they had a total of 16 votes in the majority delegation to vote against this nomination.
Did he tell you why they would want to vote it down?
So he indicated that mainly it was because of the close ties between Pierluisi and the Fiscal Control Board. Pierluisi has been, for the past few years since he retired from politics, he's been a lawyer at a law firm, O'Neill Borges, based out of San Juan, that is the law firm, or one of the local law firms that is employed by the Fiscal Control Board. So essentially the argument is he's too close to the Fiscal Control Board to adequately represent the interests of Puerto Rico.
Okay, so here's my question for you as an attorney and someone who I know who has studied the possibility of this issue because it had been rumored for the last 48 hours or even longer. If the governor appoints Pierluisi, does Pierluisi have to be confirmed by the legislature, or can the governor essentially go without it and let Pierluisi become governor on Friday at 5 p.m. when Ricardo Rosselló resigns?
So it's an interesting question. The law currently states that, in fact, the Secretary of State, if he is named during a legislative recess, and we are in a legislative recess, and he takes possession of that position as Secretary of State, can permanently substitute the governor in the case of a vacancy in that position. Now, there are constitutional law scholars that say, well, that's really not correct, that constitutionally that law should be challenged. In fact, we had on our radio show yesterday, Aníbal Acevedo Vilá, who was the governor who signed the law, and he admitted that the law said what it says, but that he now believes that that law is unconstitutional and that it should be challenged in the courts.
So can the courts handle this before Friday? I mean, here's my question. Is there enough time for all this to go through the court process to figure out what the court says?
The court could act quickly enough. The question is whether or not there's a mature controversy. There's a controversy that the court can actually decide upon. The former governor that I was mentioning is actually indicating that what should be done is that there should be a suit before the court to ask the court, even though there's not a controversy that's mature yet, to ask the court to essentially say what the law is, what the Constitution states, and what would be constitutional in this case, just to prevent or to preempt the possibility of the governor using that law to nominate Pierluisi.
And I'm using states, for example, wouldn't they usually consult the attorney general of that state? In this case, it would be Wanda Vasquez, but wouldn't they consult her for an opinion?
They probably have, and I don't know what her position is. I actually was able to get the position of the Secretary of Justice, Attorney General, in 2005, who proposed the amendment that excludes the Secretary of State from the confirmation requirement. And he has an opinion, a documented opinion, stating that the Constitution does not require that that's not a specific constitutional requirement, in order for the Secretary of State to succeed the governor in the case of a permanent vacancy. Now, again, that's why we have lawyers, right? Because there's controversies of this nature, and that's why we have the courts. This is not something that has been decided in the courts yet, and we'll see. From what I could glean from the interview that we had with Senator Nelson Cruz, it seems to me that he thinks that the appointment will be sent to the House and the Senate. My question would be what bargaining power the governor has at this point. With 72 hours left on the clock, what bargaining power he has to really move votes, considering that they already have a majority to vote him down in the Senate.
Armando, if they already have the votes and the governor moves forward with the appointment of Pierluisi anyway, does that then guarantee that Wanda Vasquez is the next governor?
Unless the governor nominates someone else, yes.
Unless the governor files a suit, right?
Well, I don't think that the governor would be the one to file the suit unless the governor were to nominate Pierluisi at 4:58 p.m. on Friday, right before his resignation becomes effective, and then it would be a really significant controversy. I mean, I'm not sure that it's the wisest thing to use this law and to test this at this point, because I do think it'll create a constitutional crisis.
So you're thinking that at this point, all bets are Wanda Vasquez is the next governor?
I would have to think so. And it seems to me that if the governor wanted to go with something that was politically palatable to the people in his party, it's clear to me that Tomás Rivera Schatz would be that alternative. The fact that he's still looking for someone else, again, with less than 72 hours on the clock, tends to indicate to me that he really doesn't want to see Tomás Rivera Schatz in Fortaleza.
And Tomás Rivera Schatz cannot become governor unless Ricardo Rosselló makes him Secretary of State, correct?
That's absolutely correct, yes. The only way, or if Wanda Vasquez were to make him Secretary of State, but of course,
don't they dislike each other?
They pretty much despise each other, yes.
So the odds of her appointing him seem just as impossible.
Are very slim.
Wow. Okay, last question. What are the odds that Ricardo Rosselló says, you know what, it's too much of a mess. I know I told you I was leaving Friday at 5, but I'm going to stay till next week or the following.
You know, that could happen, and it's interesting. I don't know if you've been following the story of this abogada motorizada, the lawyer who's on a motorcycle. I know it sounds a little bit absurd, but it's how she sells herself.
She's for people who don't know, she's been retained to represent at least the First Lady, correct?
And she organized a protest today in front of the convention center to support the governor remaining in office. Right. Now, she has been in the media since Friday saying that she is the First Lady's legal representative. If that were not the case, if somebody were out there saying that they represent me in any manner, I would have already come out to say that that's not the case if it weren't true. So I have to assume that it's true. And she was organizing this protest today. I don't know. Maybe that's running through their mind at this point.
Well, listen, it's impossible to get information out of Fortaleza. And as silly as this may seem, we are grabbing whatever scraps fall off the table, such as the First Lady's Instagram account, which she has made private now. But she posted earlier today, mission accomplished. And we gave it all for Puerto Rico, she essentially said, which led to a hell of an uproar, at least on my social media when I posted it. So listen, Armando Valdes, this has been very informative. I thank you for the time and the context, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.